How's it going everybody, UG here, and today I've got an updated Ret PvP guide. Things have actually changed quite a bit since the start of this season, so I thought I'd give a bit more of an up-to-date guide. So right off the bat, we're going to change things up a bit. So the thing that's changed the most since my last guide is gear. That's because Ret's tier is honestly really bad, and I didn't realize that at the time of making my first guide. You get such a small amount of damage from it that at times it's better just to go without it entirely, but it's also not terrible either. It does give you a tiny bit more during burst goes, but you're forced into certain talents and stats that you wouldn't always want to take. 2-set lets you pretty much get perfect stats, but you're still forced to take expurgation, and 0-set just gives you complete freedom. It's mainly up to preference, so I'm going to give you some examples of builds you can go, and you can go and test them out for yourself and decide which one of them you like the most. For the most part, there's 3 sets of gear people play: full burst, full mastery, and a balanced build. So for full burst, you can either go 0, 2, or 4 set, all of which are fine. For embellishments, you want to go Verdant Conduit and also the PvP boots. And for the other crafted pieces, you're going to want to go the NG Helm and NG Wrist for burst, Crafted Shoulders for burst mastery, and sometimes cloak for burst mastery, but PvP cloak is fine. This set gets you the most verse possible, and if you want to get even more verse, you can either go for 2 or 0 set, since you can skip the haste mastery pieces. Either work and are mainly up for preference. For gems, you mainly want to go verse mastery, and if you want an example of the build, you can either look up Vanguards or Xenial. They both play the super high verse builds. Next we have the mastery build, so this one's pretty similar. You get as much mastery as possible while still having a decent amount of verse. So the same embellishments, Dream Conduit and the PvP boots. And for crafted pieces, you're going to want to go neck, shoulders, wrist, cloak, waist, rings, and all for verse mastery. And every other piece you get is going to be verse mastery also. Same for 0 or 4 set. Just drop tier for more verse mastery pieces. This one I recommend playing 4 set generally because the increase in Templar's damage is going to be important since it's going to be a more bursty build. For gems, you mainly want the mastery verse gems or verse mastery either or. And a good example of the gear is to look up Breezy. And now finally we have the hybrid build, which is what I like to play. You get a decent amount of haste, burst, and mastery with this build. You can use any version of tier, but I recommend 2 or 4 set. For 2 set, I get tier chest and gloves. Then for embellishments, I use the Dream Conduit and the crafted PvP boots. And for the other crafted pieces, I get shoulders and cloak, both burst mastery, but you could just use the PvP cloak. When I play this build, my main goal is to try to hit 25% haste, so I get quite a few haste mastery gems. The rest are verse mastery though, but these are mainly up for preference. You can kind of mix and match and try whatever feels best for you. I just really like getting 25% haste. And then for example, just look up one of my character's armories. I'm going to have all the armories down in the description below just so you can look them up easily. And now with that out of the way, let's talk about talents, because there's honestly been quite a few changes here too recently. So this is what was standard beforehand, and it's completely fine to play pretty much always, but if you want to be a little bit more optimal, you can change a couple things around. So the most important thing is if you're playing Shuffle, instantly drop Healing Hands. Wog doesn't heal enough to be worth it, and you never really get a second lay on hands off in Shuffle, and even if you did, damp is so high that it's not going to do anything anyways. That point can go into one of 3 things: either Cleanse Toxins, a second point into Holy Aegis, or Double Horse. Cleanse Toxins is a must into SP since you can dispel their DP, which is a large part of their damage. Double Horse is really good when trying to hit a hard to hit target, especially hunters, mages, Ellies, locks, devs, or honestly any healer. Then Holy Aegis is good into pretty much everything else, but specifically into melee since you're getting a bit of extra armor out of it. So pretty much that point plus the point already in Holy Aegis are situational, and you can swap them around depending on what you're playing against. But then one more change you can make is if you're playing Magic Bop, you can completely take away Bop. Since they have the same cooldown, there's no point in having both of them, so this opens up another talent point for you that you can once again put into Cavalier or Cleanse Toxins or Holy Aegis. So a lot of times this is what my build is going to end up looking like. Now in normal 3s, it's still sometimes good to have Healing Hands since definitely doesn't ramp anywhere near as fast as in Shuffle. But even then, a lot of the times I don't really like getting Healing Hands because a lot of times you're not really getting much value out of that second lay on hands, or even really getting that far with how the meta is right now. The games are pretty fast, and just having the increased mobility or just crit is a lot better a lot of the time in my opinion. Now onto the right side, for the most part, nothing has really changed. Everything is pretty good. The only thing that you ever change is you can drop expurgation if you're playing 0 set, This lets you get a point into either Executioner's Will or Divine Auxiliary, or even Consecrated Blades, but for the most part, there's not really a point in going that if you're not playing the Exploration build anyways, so what's the point? You can also drop Judge, Jury, and Executioner for one of those as well. Another thing you could go into is you could drop Imperial Legacy for Blade of Vengeance if you want to try to go for a Way Cleavier build into some double melee thing, since you're going to be able to spread Expurgation a lot easier, and it's just a pretty decent amount of damage, but you do lose a bit of burst from not having that Divine Storm proc anymore. But that's kind of it for the Retribution side. You don't really have much to mess around with. Kind of everything is pretty standard. But next, let's get onto the PvP talents. As usual, you're pretty much always going to be going for Reckoning and Sync. You can drop them sometimes. For the most part, you can just never change them and you'll be completely fine. Then, for the third slot, you can either go Luminescence, Spell Warding, Judgment of the Peer, or Searing Glare. You play Luminescence when you're not going any of the others, since it's just a good base damage buff. You can magic buff into any double magic damage team, so any casters, rets, DHs, DKs, and sometimes an enhanced too. It's really good since it can't be purged, and also lets you get an extra talent on your Paladin tree for dropping Bop. Next is Judgment of the Peer, which is mainly good into Destros, since you can spam Dispel their dot, which is kind of annoying for them. This is the only situation I can think of where you actually drop Reckoning, since you can go Judgment of the Peer plus Magic Bop, and just have a build completely to counter Destros. But you don't have to do that, you could just go Magic Bop and be completely fine. I personally really like having Aura Reckoning like almost always, because it's really nice burst on goes. And the last one is Searing Glare. It's really good in double melee Fist Reaver teams when you aren't the kill target. It's an amazing way to peel those comps, since the Fist Reaver is forced to spell himself, because he needs to be able to hit things in order to heal, so it's a guaranteed peel for the other 2 DPS. And that's it for PvP talents. Now let's go into rotation. So the rotation is pretty simple and only slightly changes if you have Forset or not. And the biggest thing you need to do is when playing Forset is to make sure to put up Expurgation before your big go, or at least your first Judgment in the opener. So your go is going to be to have Expurgation and Judgment up, which gets you the 3 Holy Power. Then you're going to Final Wreck, Pop Wings, Templars, Toll, Wake, Templars. That's going to be your biggest damn go. Wake and Toll hit really hard, and you want to rotate Toll earlier since you get the Judgment procs, which adds a bit of extra damage to your go. Then, your general rotation is going to be number 1, Templars with 3+ Holy Power, then Hammer of Wrath, then Judgment if no debuff, Blade of Justice, Judgment, then if nothing available, throw out Flash Heal since it's better than doing nothing. I should have a clip of me doing my rotation for 10 to 20 seconds playing while I'm talking about that. And now, the last part is 3v3 comps. So this could easily change depending on the patch notes, but for now, the best comp is Ret DH X. The best healers are going to be Fist Reaver or Prez, but it works with pretty much any healer. The comp does insane damage and has a really good utility between the Ret and the DH. It can also delete healers randomly in a double stun go. The next best comp is going to be Ret War with a Fist Reaver. The comp is significantly worse with any other healer right now, but those 3 together just support each other so well, it's toxic. Next best comp is going to be Ret Hunter, mainly with Argyrid. Argyrid's definitely the best healer for the comp. It just extends the game and also has some follow-up CC. Normally, Priest would be decent, but Priest is just in a really bad spot right now and just doesn't really do too well. Arsham is also technically good, but it kind of just depends on what you're queuing into some matchups, it's going to be significantly worse than an Argyrid, but into some, it's going to be much better. Also, you can try Preservation Invoker. I think it's going to fill a similar role to Disc Priest as kind of a more offensive healer. It also has the follow-up Fear DR, which can be really nice, and just the added damage can really make goes a lot smoother. And also, paired with a Ret, it's really going to be hard to CC while rotating between Nultron and Sync. And lastly, Fist Reaver is also pretty good for the comp since it gives you guys a lot more damage, and it just makes you guys very tanky and durable. It can just be really hard into certain double caster teams that are really hard for the Fist Reaver to actually connect or get spam peeled, since the Hunter doesn't really provide too much help for the Fist Reaver. Then, the last good comp is probably Ret Demo. It's a really durable comp. Demo can keep the Ret alive for a while, and vice versa. It's probably best with an Argyrid and Arsham, since the comp's main win condition is to kind of just draw out the game and damage people, but then sometimes win during their burst windows. Just having those 2 healers that have really good mana pools are probably better. Other comps can work, but these are kind of just your best options, and that's about it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you have any questions, ask down in the comments below.